Commander Zexthal sat in his command chair aboard the Confederation starship Valor. The blue lights of the bridge cast strange shadows across his scaled face as he reviewed the morning reports. Outside the large viewing window, stars moved slowly past as the ship traveled through deep space. The communication officer turned toward him. "Sir, we have received the intelligence reports from the New Haven colony attack." Zexthal nodded and took the datapad. He had been expecting this report for 3 days. The Vorthic Empire had struck another human colony, and it was his job to review what had happened. These attacks were becoming more common, and each one made the peace talks more difficult. He began reading the first report. The attack had lasted only 4 hours. The Vorthak forces had overwhelmed the small defense force quickly. The colony's population was listed as 2,847 humans. The casualty report showed 891 confirmed dead and 1,734 survivors who had been evacuated to safety stations. Something felt wrong. Zexthal had been reviewing attack reports for 15 years, and the numbers usually added up perfectly. He counted again. 891 plus 1,734 equals 2,625. Where were the other 222 people? He called up the detailed survivor list on his screen. Most of the names were adults. There were some teenagers, but very few small children. In a farming colony like New Haven, there should have been many families with young children. "Lieutenant Kresh," he called to his intelligence officer, "come look at this report." The young officer moved quickly to his commander's side. Kresh had always been good with details, which was why Zexthal trusted him with important work. "What do you see when you look at these numbers?" Zexthal asked. Kresh studied the datapad for several minutes. His eyes grew wide as he made the same discovery. "Sir, there are people missing from the count, and most of the missing seem to be children." Zexthal felt a cold feeling in his stomach. In all his years of military service, he had never seen numbers that did not match. Military reports were always exact. Someone had either made a very big mistake or something terrible had happened. "Get me the survivor interviews," he ordered. The interviews had been conducted by Confederation medical teams at the rescue stations. Zexthal began reading the statements from the colony survivors. Most told similar stories of the attack, but a few caught his attention. Jake Morrison, the colony administrator, had given a long statement. He described how the Vorthic forces had landed near the main settlement, but instead of attacking the defense positions first, they had gone straight to the school and the family housing areas. "They knew exactly where to find the children," Morrison had said. "It was like they had maps of our colony. They used some kind of gas that made people fall asleep. When I woke up, all the children were gone." Lisa Grant, a teacher at the colony school, had been hiding in a storage room during the attack. She reported seeing Vorthak soldiers carrying unconscious children to their transport ships. The soldiers had ignored the adults who were also unconscious from the gas. "They only took the children," she had told the interviewer. "They left the adults behind. Why would they do that?" Zexthal set down the datapad and rubbed his temples. This was not how military attacks worked. Soldiers took territory, destroyed enemy forces, and sometimes captured prisoners for information. They did not select only children from the population. He called up the security footage that had been recovered from the colony. Most of the cameras had been destroyed, but a few had survived. The images were grainy, but he could see enough to understand what had happened. The Vorthic forces had split into 3 groups. One group had attacked the defense positions to keep the human soldiers busy. The second group had gone to the government buildings. But the third group, the largest one, had gone directly to areas where families lived. In one video clip, he watched Vorthic soldiers walking past wounded human adults to reach a playground where children had been hiding. The soldiers used handheld devices that released a blue gas. Within seconds, the children collapsed. The soldiers then carried the unconscious children to waiting transport vehicles. Zexthal had seen many battle recordings in his career. This was not a battle. This was a harvest. He stood up from his chair and walked to the viewing window. The stars looked cold and distant. In his mind, he could see the faces of the missing children from the colony records. Emma Rodriguez, age 10, Carlos Rodriguez, age 7, Danny Cooper, age 5, Amy Walsh, age 8. The list went on and on. "Sir," Lieutenant Kresh said quietly, "what do we do with this information?" It was a good question. Zexthel knew that his superiors would not want to hear that the Vorthic Empire might be kidnapping children. The peace talks were too important. The war had already lasted 12 years and cost millions of lives. Everyone wanted it to end, but those missing children deserved justice. Their families deserved to know what had happened to them. And if the Vorthak were really taking children, other colonies were in danger. "Send a message to Dr. Elena Hayes at the medical station," he ordered. "Tell her I need to speak with her about the New Haven survivors. And get me all the colony attack reports from the past 2 years? Sir, should I inform High Command about our findings?" Zexthel thought about this carefully. If he reported his suspicions now, his superiors might order him to stop investigating. They might classify the information and bury it to protect the peace talks. But if he waited until he had more proof, it might be too late to help the missing children. Not yet, he decided. We need more evidence first. Over the next several hours, Zexthel reviewed every colony attack report from the past 2 years. In each case, he found the same pattern. The population counts never matched exactly. There were always people missing, and most of the missing were children. The Hendricks colony attack 6 months ago was missing 45 people, mostly children under age 12. The new Boston settlement raid had 67 unaccounted civilians, again mostly young children. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. Lieutenant Kresh brought him a cup of hot tea and sat down across from his commander. "Sir, I have been thinking about this situation. If the Vorthak are taking children, what are they doing with them?" Zexthel had been wondering the same thing. The Vorthak were a proud warrior species. They valued strength and honor in battle. What would they want with human children? "I do not know," he admitted, "but we are going to find out." Dr. Hayes contacted them that evening. She had been working with the New Haven survivors and had noticed some strange things. Several of the adult survivors had gaps in their memory from the attack. They remembered the gas, but nothing after that until they woke up hours later. "It is like someone removed specific memories," she explained through the communication link. "I have never seen anything like it." The survivors remember everything before the attack and everything after they woke up, but the time period when the children disappeared is blank. This was another piece of evidence that the attack had not been random. The Vorthak had planned this carefully. They had technology to make people forget what they had seen. As Zexthel prepared for sleep that night, he made a decision. He would find out what had happened to those children, no matter what it cost him. The missing faces from the colony records would not leave his mind. Somewhere in the galaxy, 222 human children were in danger, and he might be the only one who could help them. The next morning, he would begin an investigation that would change everything he thought he knew about the war, about his own government, and about the true nature of evil in the galaxy. Commander Zexthel stood in the secure briefing room 3 levels below the main bridge. The room was small and windowless, designed for meetings that required complete privacy. Lieutenant Kresh sat across from him, and Dr. Elena Hayes appeared on the communication screen from her medical station. "What I'm about to tell you must stay between us," Zexthel said quietly. "If High Command discovers what we are doing, they will stop us immediately." Dr. Hayes nodded from the screen. She was a middle-aged human woman with kind eyes and graying hair. She had been working with alien species for 20 years and understood the politics of the Confederation better than most humans. "I have been examining the New Haven survivors more closely," she said. "The memory gaps are not natural. Someone used advanced neural manipulation technology on them. The survivors remember being gassed, but everything after that is gone until they woke up 12 hours later." Zexthel leaned forward. 12 hours? The attack report said the Vorthak forces were only on the ground for 4 hours. Exactly, Dr. Hayes replied. The survivors lost 8 more hours of memory than the official timeline shows. Someone spent a lot of time on that colony after the attack ended. Lieutenant Kresh pulled up a star chart on his datapad. Sir, I have been tracking Vorthok ship movements in the area. 3 cargo vessels left the New Haven system during the attack, but only one was listed in the official battle reports. Where did the other 2 ships go? Zexthel asked. That is the strange part, Kresh said. They both traveled to the Kepler Station, a trading post in neutral space. The station is known for dealing in exotic goods and asking very few questions. Zexthel felt his blood grow cold. He had heard rumors about places like Kepler Station. They were where criminals went to buy and sell things that were illegal in civilized space. If the missing children had been taken there, they were in great danger. We need to get more information about those cargo ships, he decided, but we cannot use official channels. Kresh, do you still have contacts in the smuggling networks? The young officer looked uncomfortable. Before joining the Confederation military, Kresh had worked as a trader in the outer systems. He knew people who operated outside the law. I might be able to reach out to some old friends, he said carefully. But it will take time, and it will not be free. Do it, Zexthel ordered. Use my personal credits if you need to. While Kresh worked on gathering intelligence, Zexthel received an unexpected message. Captain Rick Torres, a human marine officer, was requesting a meeting. Torres was escorting the New Haven survivors to a permanent refugee station, and he had some concerns about what he had learned during the journey. 2 hours later, Captain Torres arrived on the Valor. He was a big man with short dark hair and scars on his hands from years of combat. He looked tired and angry. Commander, I need to report something that is not in the official records, Torres said as soon as he entered Zexthel's office. What did you discover? Torres sat down heavily in the chair across from the commander's desk. I spent the last week talking to the survivors. They remember more than what is in their statements. The memories are coming back slowly. Tell me what they said. Paul Davis, the colony mechanic, remembered seeing Vorthak soldiers with special equipment. They had small devices that made a humming sound. When they pointed these devices at the children, the kids fell asleep instantly. But the adults who were hit with the gas stayed awake longer. Zexthel made notes on his datapad. What else? Amy Collins, one of the colony nurses, treated several adults after the attack. She said they all had the same symptoms. Memory loss, but also strange marks on their necks. Small puncture wounds that healed very quickly. Injection marks? That is what she thought. Someone gave those people drugs to make them forget. And sir, there is something else. The survivors keep mentioning a smell. What kind of smell? Torres looked uncomfortable. They said it smelled like fear, like children who were very scared. The smell was strongest near the school and the family housing areas. Zexthel set down his datapad. In his species, fear produced a distinct chemical scent. If humans had the same reaction, and if the survivors could still smell it days later, it meant the children had been terrified for a long time. Captain Torres, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Do you think your government knows about this? Torres was quiet for a long moment. I hope not, sir. But I have been thinking about it. 3 colonies have been attacked in the past 6 months. Every time children go missing. Every time, the official reports focus on military targets and ignore the missing civilians. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting that someone does not want these disappearances investigated. Maybe they think the missing children are just casualties of war. Maybe they think finding out the truth would make the peace talks more difficult. Zexthel understood what the human was really saying. The Confederation government might be willing to sacrifice some children to end the war. The idea made him sick. Captain, would you be willing to help us investigate this unofficially? Torres nodded immediately. Sir, I have 2 daughters back. On Earth, if someone took them, I would want every person in the galaxy looking for them. These missing kids deserve the same. That evening, Lieutenant Kresh returned with disturbing news. His contacts in the smuggling networks had heard rumors about a new type of cargo being moved through neutral space. Human children were being sold to wealthy collectors in the outer systems. The prices are very high, Kresh reported. A single human child can sell for more than a military starship. They are being marketed as exotic pets and research subjects. Dr. Hayes joined the conversation through the communication link. That explains why they are taking children instead of adults. Children adapt faster to new environments. They learn languages quickly and they are easier to control. Who is buying them? Zexthel asked. Mostly Vorthak nobles, Kresh said, but also some research facilities that study alien psychology. The buyers seem to be interested in human learning abilities and emotional responses. Zexthel felt rage building inside him. These children were being treated like laboratory animals. They were being sold to aliens who saw them as entertainment. Sir, Kresh continued, there is more. My contact says there is a major shipment happening next week. A transport vessel called the Dark Prophet will be carrying a large group of human children through the Centauri system. How many children? At least 50, maybe more. Zexthel made a decision that would change his life forever. We are going to intercept that ship. Dr. Hayes looked worried on the screen. Commander, that would be an act of war. You would be? Attacking a vessel in neutral space without authorization. Those children did not authorize being kidnapped either, Zexthel replied. Sometimes doing the right thing means breaking the rules. Captain Torres stepped forward. Sir, if you are planning a rescue mission, my Marines and I want to help. We have the training and equipment for this type of operation. This could end all our careers, Zexthel warned. High Command will not forgive us for starting an incident during peace talks. Some things are more important than careers, Torres said simply. Over the next 2 days, they planned the rescue mission carefully. The Dark Prophet would be traveling through an asteroid field where sensor readings were difficult. They could approach the ship without being detected easily. Dr. Hayes arranged for a medical team to be ready to treat traumatized children. Captain Torres selected his best Marines for the boarding operation. Lieutenant Kresh gathered intelligence about the ship's defenses and crew. As they prepared to leave for the intercept point, Zexthel thought about the consequences of what they were doing. If they succeeded, they would save dozens of children but probably start a diplomatic crisis. If they failed, those children would disappear forever into the black market slave trade. He looked at the photos of the missing children from New Haven that he kept on his desk. Emma Rodriguez smiled back at him from one of the pictures. She had been looking forward to her 11th birthday when the attack happened. We are coming for you, he whispered to the photo. All of you. The Valor moved silently through the asteroid field, its engines running at minimum power to avoid detection. Commander Zexthel stood on the bridge, watching the main screen as they approached the intercept point. His hearts were beating fast, but his hands were steady. Contact on sensors, reported the navigation officer. The Dark Prophet is exactly where our intelligence said it would be. Captain Torres stood beside Zexthel wearing full combat armor. His 12 Marines were ready in the shuttle bay, armed with non-lethal weapons. They had practiced the boarding procedure dozens of times over the past 3 days. The ship is bigger than we expected, Torres observed, looking at the sensor. Readings, crew of 25, heavily armed. This is going to be dangerous. Lieutenant Kresh moved to the communications station. Sir, I am detecting multiple life signs in the cargo hold. At least 40 human children, maybe more. Zexthel felt his stomach twist. 40 children were trapped on that ship, being transported, like cargo to buyers who would treat them as pets or test subjects. The thought made him sick, but it also made him more determined. Begin the approach, he ordered. All hands to battle stations. The Valor moved closer to the Dark Prophet, staying hidden behind a large asteroid until the last moment. When they were close enough, Zexthel opened a communication channel to the transport ship. This is Commander Zexthel of the Confederation. Navy, you are carrying illegal cargo and are ordered to surrender immediately. The response came quickly. Confederation ship, you have no authority in neutral space. We are carrying legal trade goods under proper documentation. We know what you are carrying, Zexthel replied. Surrender now, or we will take your ship by force. The Dark Prophet tried to run. Its engines flared to life as it turned toward the edge of the asteroid field. But the Valor was faster and more maneuverable. Within minutes, they had disabled the transport ship's engines with precise weapon strikes. Boarding shuttles away, Torres reported over the communication system. Zexthel watched on the monitor as two shuttles approached the Dark Prophet. The first shuttle carried Captain Torres and his Marines. The second carried Dr. Hayes and her medical team, ready to treat the rescued children. The boarding operation began smoothly. Torres and his Marines cut through the transport ship's hull and entered through the cargo bay. The crew of the Dark Prophet put up little resistance once they realized they were outnumbered. Cargo bay secured, Torres reported. Commander, you need to see this. Zexthel transported directly to the Dark Prophet. What he found in the cargo bay made him want to destroy every person involved in this operation. Dozens of human children were trapped in small metal cages, barely large enough for them to lie down. The cages were stacked 3 high along the walls. The children were awake but seemed confused and frightened. Most were between the ages of 6 and 12. They wore simple gray clothes and had identification numbers marked on their arms. Many were crying softly. Dear stars, Zexthel whispered. They are treating them like animals. Dr. Hayes was already moving between the cages, checking on the children. They have been drugged, she called out. Something to keep them calm and passive. But they are alive and seem physically healthy. Torres and his Marines were freeing the children from their cages. Each child was carefully lifted out and wrapped in warm blankets. Some of the children were too scared to speak, but others began asking questions. Are you here to take us home? Asked a small girl with dark hair and brown eyes. Yes, Torres told her gently. We are going to take you somewhere safe. The girl looked up at him with hope in her eyes. My name is Emma Rodriguez. I am 10 years old. The bad aliens took me from my school. Zexthel felt his heart skip. This was the child from the New Haven colony photos. Emma Rodriguez, who had been looking forward to her 11th birthday. She was alive. Emma, do you remember what happened to you? Dr. Hayes asked softly. The girl thought for a moment. There was a gas that made me sleep. When I woke up, I was in a cage. They gave me shots that made me feel sleepy all the time. There were other kids from my school here, too. Where are the other children from your school now? Zexthel asked. Emma's face became sad. They took them away yesterday. The alien guard said they were going to new homes. But Carlos, my little brother, he is still here somewhere. Torres keyed his radio, searched the entire ship. There may be more children in other compartments. While the Marines continued searching, Zexthel questioned the captured crew members. Most claimed they were just following orders and did not know what their cargo really was. But the ship's captain, a Vorthek named Kethvel, was more talkative. You have made a terrible mistake, Kethvel said. This cargo is worth more than your entire ship. The buyers will be very angry when their goods do not arrive. These are children, not goods, Zexthel replied coldly. Kethvel laughed. Children that no one will miss. Children from colonies that have been destroyed. We are giving them new homes with families who will care for them. Care for them? You mean families who will keep them as pets. The buyers pay well for human children. They are intelligent and easy to train. Much better than the usual alien slaves. Zexthel had to control himself to keep from hitting the Vorthek captain. How long has this been going on? 3 years, maybe 4? Business is very good. Human colonies are easy targets, and human children adapt quickly to new environments. How many children have you transported? Kethvel thought for a moment. Hundreds, maybe 1,000. I do not keep exact records. The number hit Zexthel like a physical blow. Over the past 3 years, while the Confederation had been focused on peace talks, over 1,000 human children had been kidnapped and sold into slavery. Lieutenant Kresh approached with a datapad. Sir, I have been examining the ship's records. This vessel has made 47 trips carrying human children. The buyers are located throughout Vortex space and beyond. Who is organizing this operation? The records show payments from multiple sources, Vortex nobles, research facilities, even some government officials. But the largest buyer is someone called the Collector. Who is the Collector? Kethville's expression changed when he heard the name. For the first time, he looked frightened. You do not want to know about the Collector. That one buys children for purposes that even we do not discuss, Dr. Hayes called out from across the cargo bay. Commander, we found 7 more children in a hidden compartment. One of them is very sick. Zexthel rushed to see what she had discovered. In a small room behind the engine compartment, 7 children were locked in even smaller cages. These children looked different from the others. They were thinner and had strange marks on their arms and necks. These children have been experimented on, Dr. Hayes said quietly. Someone has been testing drugs and medical procedures on them? One of the children, a boy who looked about 8 years old, was barely conscious. His skin was pale and he was breathing with difficulty. That is Carlos, Emma said from behind them. She had followed them to the hidden compartment. He is my little brother. The bad aliens kept giving him shots that made him sick. Dr. Hayes immediately began treating Carlos while Torres called for emergency medical transport. The boy's condition was serious, but Dr. Hayes thought he would recover with proper treatment. As they prepared to transport all 37 rescued children to the Valor, Zexthel made a decision that would change everything. He was going to interrogate Kethville properly and find out everything about this trafficking operation. Captain Torres, secure all the evidence from this ship. I want every data file, every communication record, every piece of cargo manifest. What? About the crew? They are all under arrest for crimes against sapient species. They will face trial in Confederation courts. As the last of the children were safely aboard the Valor, Zexthel looked back at the Dark Prophet. This ship represented years of suffering for hundreds of children. But it also represented evidence of the largest crime he had ever discovered. Sir, Lieutenant Kresh said, what do we do now? We have the children, but we also have proof that this trafficking operation is much bigger than we thought. Zexthel watched through the window as Emma Rodriguez held her sick brother's hand in the medical bay. The girl had been brave throughout the rescue, helping the other children and answering questions even though she was frightened. Now we find out how far this goes, he said, and we make sure it never happens again. The interrogation of Kethville would reveal the true scope of the trafficking network. What they learned would shock the entire galaxy and change the course of the war forever. The Confederation High Command meeting room was filled with tension. Admiral Veltar sat at the head of the long table, his blue skin darker than usual with anger. Around the table sat 12 of the most powerful military leaders in the galaxy. And at the far end, Commander Zexthel waited to hear his fate. Commander Zexthel, Admiral Veltar began, his voice cold and formal, you have violated direct orders, attacked a vessel in neutral space, and created a diplomatic crisis that threatens to restart the war. Explain yourself. Zexthel stood up slowly. In front of him on the table was a datapad containing all the evidence they had gathered, photos of the rescued children, medical records showing the experiments, communication logs proving the trafficking network, and the testimony of 37 young victims. Sir, I present evidence of the systematic kidnapping and trafficking of human children by elements within the Vorthic Empire. Over the past 3 years, more than 1,000 children have been stolen from their families and sold into slavery. General Korth, a Vorthak officer who served as a liaison with the Confederation, slammed his hand on the table. These are lies designed to sabotage the peace process. Commander Zexthel has attacked an innocent cargo vessel and invented this story to justify his illegal actions. Innocent? Zexthel activated the holographic display in the center of the table. Images appeared showing the children in their cages aboard the Dark Prophet. Does this look innocent to you? The room fell silent as the military leaders saw the evidence. Some looked shocked, others angry, and a few seemed worried about the political implications. Admiral Veltar studied the images carefully. How do we know these children were not prisoners of war? The Vorthak have the right to hold captives taken in legitimate military operations. Because they are children, Zexthel replied. The youngest victim we rescued was 5 years old. What military threat could a 5-year-old pose? At that moment, the door opened and General Susan Martinez entered the room. She was the human representative to the Confederation High Command, a former military officer who had fought in the early years of the war. Her presence changed the atmosphere in the room immediately. Admiral Veltar, she said, taking her seat. At the table, I have reviewed Commander Zexthel's evidence. The human government demands immediate action to locate and rescue all remaining victims of this trafficking operation. General Martinez, Admiral Veltar replied carefully, we must consider the broader implications. If we accuse the Vorthak Empire of these crimes, the peace talks will collapse. Millions more people will die in renewed fighting. And if we do nothing, thousands of children will remain in slavery, Martinez shot back. The human colonies have contributed over 2 million soldiers to this war. They have sacrificed their sons and daughters for the Confederation cause. In return, we owe them justice when their children are stolen. General Korth leaned forward. The Vorthak government has no knowledge of these alleged crimes. If individual soldiers have engaged in illegal activities, they should be prosecuted, but this is not grounds for ending the peace process. Lieutenant Kresh, who had been standing quietly behind Zexthel, stepped forward. Sir, may I present additional evidence? Admiral Veltar nodded, and Kresh activated another section of the holographic display. Financial records appeared showing money transfers from Vorthak government accounts to the trafficking network. These are official Vorthak military funding records, Kresh explained. They show regular payments to the trafficking operation over the past 3 years. The money trail leads directly to high-ranking officials in the Vorthak Defense Ministry. General Korth's face turned a darker shade of green. Those records could be fabricated. Financial data is easy to fake. Then you will not mind if we share them with independent investigators? General Martinez said with a cold smile. The debate continued for 2 hours. Some officers argued for immediate military action to rescue the remaining children. Others insisted that the peace talks were too important to risk. A few suggested that the evidence should be buried to prevent a diplomatic crisis. Finally, Admiral Veltar called for a recess. The military leaders left the room in small groups, talking quietly among themselves. Zexthel remained at the table with General Martinez and Lieutenant Kresh. Commander, Martinez said quietly, I want you to know that the human government stands behind your actions. You did the right thing. Thank you, General. But I fear the High Command will order us to stop investigating. Too many people want to pretend this never happened. They might try, Martinez agreed. But they will have to deal with the human response if they do. When the meeting resumed, Admiral Veltar looked tired and frustrated. Commander Zexthel, the High Command has decided to establish a special investigation committee to examine your evidence. However, you are ordered to cease all unauthorized activities immediately. What about the children who are still missing? The investigation committee will determine the appropriate response once they have reviewed all the facts. General Martinez stood up. Admiral, how long will this investigation take? As long as necessary to reach the truth. That is not acceptable. Every day you delay, more children suffer. I am informing you that the human government will not wait for committee reports while our children are being tortured. The tension in the room increased. General Korth looked nervous. General Martinez, surely you do not want to restart the war over unproven allegations. I want to restart the war over proven facts, Martinez replied. And the facts are that? Over 1,000 human children have been kidnapped and sold into slavery while the Confederation looked the other way. At that moment, the door opened again. Dr. Hayes entered, escorting a small figure. It was Emma Rodriguez, the 10-year-old girl they had rescued from the Dark Prophet. She looked tiny in the large military meeting room, but her eyes were bright. and determined. Admiral Veltar, Dr. Hayes said, Emma has asked to speak to the High Command about her experiences. Some of the officers looked uncomfortable. They were not used to having children in their military meetings. But Admiral Veltar gestured for Emma to approach the table. "What do you want to tell us, young lady?" he asked gently. Emma looked around. The room had all the important military officers. She was clearly nervous, but she took a deep breath and began to speak. "My name is Emma Rodriguez. I am 10 years old. The bad aliens took me from my school on New Haven. They put me in a cage. Like I was an animal, they gave me shots that made me sick. They hurt my little brother Carlos." She paused, looking directly at General Korth. "They told me no one would come looking for me. They said human children were not important enough for anyone to care about." General Korth shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Emma continued. "But Commander Zexthel came for us. He risked his life to save me and my brother and all the other kids. He proved that someone did care about us." She turned to address the entire room. "There are still kids out there in cages. Kids who are scared and hurt and think no one is coming to help them. You have to find them. You have to bring them home." The room was completely silent. Even the most hardened military officers were. Moved by the girl's simple, honest words, Admiral Veltar cleared his throat. "Emma, thank you for your courage in speaking to us. We will consider everything you have said." Emma looked disappointed. "Considering is not the same as doing. Those kids need help now, not later." She turned and walked back to Dr. Hayes, leaving the military leaders to think about what she had said. General Martinez stood up. "Admiral, you have heard from the victim herself. The human government will not accept delays or committees or political considerations. We want action, and we want it now. And if the High Command refuses," Martinez's expression hardened, "then humanity will take action on its own, with or without Confederation support." The meeting ended with no resolution, but everyone knew that everything had changed. The evidence was too strong to ignore, and the human government was too angry to be patient. The war was about to enter a new phase, and this time it would be fought not just for territory or resources, but for the lives of stolen children. As the officers filed out of the meeting room, Zexthel realized that his investigation had done more than expose a crime. It had revealed the true character of every person involved. Some had chosen politics over justice, while others had chosen to do what was right regardless of the consequences. The next phase of the conflict was about to begin, and it would test everyone's commitment to the values they claimed to defend. The emergency session of the Galactic Confederation Council lasted only 30 minutes. Admiral Veltar stood at the center of the great circular chamber, addressing representatives from 40 different worlds and species. His voice carried to every corner of the massive room. "The evidence presented by Commander Zexthel has been verified by independent investigators," he announced. "The systematic kidnapping and trafficking of human children by elements within the Vorthic Empire constitutes a crime against sapient species. The Confederation hereby declares the non-aggression pact with the Vorthic Empire to be void." The Vorthic delegates immediately stood and walked out of the chamber. Their leader, Ambassador Thekmar, paused at the exit to address the council one final time. "The Vorthic Empire denies all accusations. This declaration of hostility will have consequences that the Confederation will regret." As soon as the Vorthic delegates left, General Martinez activated her communication device. "Admiral Sullivan, you are cleared to begin Operation Lost Children." 3 hours later, the largest rescue fleet in galactic history began moving toward Vorthic space. Admiral Kate Sullivan commanded over 200 ships from the Human Defense Fleet. Every human colony had contributed vessels to the mission. Earth itself had sent its most advanced warships, but this was not just a human operation. Commander Zexthel, now promoted to Admiral, led a combined force of Confederation ships whose crews had volunteered for the mission. Species from across the galaxy had been horrified by the evidence of child trafficking and wanted to help with the rescue operation. The fleet was divided into 50 smaller groups, each targeting a different location where intelligence suggested children were being held. The main targets included Vorthik research facilities, noble estates, and black market stations throughout the outer systems. Admiral Sullivan stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Earth vessel Defender. Around her are officers from a dozen different species worked together to coordinate the massive operation. The main screen showed the positions of all 50 task forces as they approached their targets. "Admiral," reported her communications officer, "we are receiving a message from the Vorthik Defense Ministry. They claim they want to negotiate." "Too late for negotiations," Sullivan replied. "We tried that approach for 3 years while they stole our children. Today we get them back." At the same time, Admiral Zexthal was leading Task Force 7 toward a research station in the Kepler system. Intelligence reports suggested that over 100 human children were being held there for medical experiments. The station was heavily defended, but Zexthal's force included some of the Confederation's most advanced warships. "Admiral," Lieutenant Kresh reported from the sensor station, "the research station is powering up its weapons." "They know we are coming. All ships, prepare for combat. Remember, our priority is rescuing the children. Do not destroy any section that might contain prisoners." The battle was brief but intense. The research station's defenses were designed to keep raiders away, not to fight a full military fleet. Within 20 minutes, the station's weapons were disabled and boarding teams were cutting through the hull. Captain Torres led the first boarding team into the station. What they found made even the experienced Marines sick with anger. The children were being kept in laboratory conditions with monitoring devices attached to their bodies. Many showed signs of drug testing and surgical procedures. "Medical teams? To Section 7 immediately," Torres called over his radio. "We have children here who need immediate treatment." Dr. Hayes and her expanded medical team rushed to treat the rescued children. Some were in critical condition from the experiments that had been performed on them. Others were healthy but deeply traumatized by their experiences. As the rescue teams worked, they found detailed records of the experiments. The Vorthak researchers had been studying human brain development, testing new drugs, and even attempting to modify human genetics. The children had been treated as laboratory animals. Similar scenes were playing out across 50 different locations. Human and Confederation forces were finding children in research facilities, noble mansions, mining colonies, and slave markets. Each discovery added to the growing rage of the rescue fleet. On the mining world of Draken Prime, Admiral Johnson's task force found 30 children being used as forced laborers in the mineral extraction facilities. The children were malnourished and exhausted, but they cheered when they saw human soldiers coming to rescue them. At the estate of Vorthik Noble Kefalin, Admiral Chen's forces discovered a dozen children being kept as entertainment for wealthy guests. The children had been trained to perform tricks and were punished if they did not obey commands quickly enough. The most disturbing discovery came at a black market station near the Galactic Rim. Admiral Brown's task force found evidence of an auction where human children were being sold to buyers throughout the galaxy. The station's records showed that over 300 children had been sold there in the past year alone, but the biggest target was still ahead. Intelligence had located the mysterious collector on a heavily fortified world deep in Vorthak space. Admiral Sullivan herself led the assault on this target, bringing the most powerful ships in the human fleet. The collector's fortress was protected by multiple defense platforms and a fleet of warships. The battle lasted 6 hours and cost the human fleet 12 ships. But when the defenses finally fell, the rescue teams made a discovery that shocked everyone. The collector had been keeping over 400 human children in a vast underground facility. The children ranged in age from 3 to 15, and many had been held for years. The collector had been using them for his own twisted experiments, trying to understand human emotions and psychology. Emma Rodriguez was part of the rescue team that entered the collector's facility. She had insisted on coming along to help identify other children from her school. When she saw the conditions in the underground chambers, she began to cry. "All these kids," she whispered to Dr. Hayes. "How could anyone do this to children?" But Emma's sadness quickly turned to determination. She moved through the facility, comforting the other children and helping the rescue teams identify those who needed immediate medical attention. Her courage inspired the other rescued children to be brave as well. The final count was staggering. Operation Lost Children rescued over 800 human children from 47 different locations. Some had been held for only a few months, but others had been prisoners for years. All of them were traumatized, and many would need extensive medical treatment. The rescued children were taken to medical stations throughout human space for treatment and rehabilitation. Families who had thought their children were dead were reunited with sons and daughters they never expected to see again. Foster families were found for children whose parents had been killed in the colony attacks. The political consequences were enormous. The Vorthic Empire was expelled from the Galactic Confederation and faced economic sanctions from dozens of worlds. Several Vorthic officials were arrested and put on trial for crimes against sapient species, but the most important consequence was the establishment of the Children Protection Treaty. Every member of the Galactic Confederation signed an agreement that made the trafficking of children from any species a crime punishable by military intervention. Special investigation units were created to monitor for signs of child trafficking and respond immediately. Admiral Zexthal was promoted to head the new Child Protection Agency. His experience with the investigation and his commitment to justice made him the obvious choice for the position. Admiral Sullivan became his deputy, ensuring that humanity would always have a voice in protecting children throughout the galaxy. 6 months after the rescue operation, Emma Rodriguez visited Admiral Zexthal at his new headquarters. She had recovered from her experiences and was back in school, but she had not forgotten the aliens who had saved her. "Admiral," she said, presenting him with a drawing she had made, "I drew this picture of you and Captain Torres and Dr. Hayes. I wanted you to know that. I will never forget what you did for me and my brother and all the other kids." The drawing showed all of them standing together, with Emma and the other rescued children safe behind them. At the bottom, in careful handwriting, she had written, "Thank you for proving that someone cared about us." Zexthal kept the drawing on his desk as a reminder of why his work was important. Every day, his teams investigated reports of missing children and worked to prevent new trafficking operations from starting. The galaxy was now watching for signs of child trafficking, and children everywhere were safer because of their vigilance. The war with the Vorthic Empire eventually ended, but the Children Protection Agency continued its work. Admiral Zexthal often said that rescuing those children had been the most important mission of his career, because it had proven that justice was more important than politics and that protecting the innocent was worth any sacrifice.